You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Do me a quick favor right off the jump going. Hit that like button. Jump in the comment section down below as well. Mailbag Monday right around the corner. Want to start racking up those questions. And subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. Thank you to everyone who helped me reach my goal of 2,000 subscribers before the month of January came to a close. But definitely still want to see those numbers climbing in the right direction. And last but certainly not least, got to give a shout out to today's sponsor, which is FanDuel. Check out FanDuel.com or go and download the FanDuel Sportsbook app right now to win $150 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Happy Monday. I know it's a little bit tough coming after the Super Bowl last night. Bit of a wake-up check here on Monday morning. A little bit of a slap to the face as we jump back into reality, as I'm sure many of you out there, like myself, indulge themselves with way too much food, perhaps maybe way too many beverages as well. I didn't go that category as I can't afford to on my Sundays any longer, but I know many people out there do as well, and I know many people out there like myself as well certainly enjoyed watching the Kansas City Chiefs get a beatdown on national television for the first time in a handful of years. Very reminiscent to what happened when they took on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a handful of years ago. Congratulations to the Super Bowl Eagles for winning their second Super Bowl in the last 10 years now. Wasn't the most exciting game, but Super Bowl Sunday, always fun hanging out with friends and family. So I hope everyone enjoyed themselves over the weekend. But let's get to the hockey talk. As you all know, I have a Twitter account, Talkin' Hockey. Make sure to go and follow that account for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Quick plug, but getting into the hockey talk, if you will, Blackhawks had a pair of games over the weekend before they entered into the Four Nations break. And if you clicked on today's episode specifically to hear about my Four Nations preview and my prediction, you can easily jump to segment 2 of today's show, where I'll break all of that stuff down by finding the time-coded stamp down in the description. Again, a reminder of something that I do on each and every episode. So if you want to skip through me talking about one certain thing to hear me talk about another, you can easily jump to that part by just clicking down in the description. But Blackhawks had a pair of games over the weekend, pair of divisional matchups actually, before hitting the Four Nations break. They have 2 weeks off before their next contest on February 22nd, I believe it is, when they return to play against the Columbus Blue Jackets. But a pair of hard-fought divisional contests over the weekend for the Blackhawks on Friday night at the United Center against the Nashville Predators, and then on Saturday to close things out in St. Louis against the Blues. Starting with Friday night against the Preds, one of two, I believe, 5-goal leads the Chicago Blackhawks have had this season. One of their best performances of the year in a 6-2 thrashing of the Preds on home ice. And you can really dub this one the Ryan Donato game, who, as I've referenced time and time again on my Blackhawks deep dives, the most underappreciated member of this Blackhawks team this season, has been putting up great numbers, certainly in the goal-scoring department, but also just plays the right way, goes about his business with the right style. I think is going to be very attractive for many teams come trade deadline time, and I will be having a Ryan Donato trade deadline episode coming out later on this week, something for you all to be keeping an eye on. But you can dub this one the Ryan Donato game, even though he had been performing well these last couple of weeks. And as I talked about, something I've mentioned all season long, he's been one of the best Blackhawks players. But this was kind of like his breakout party or coming out party, if you will, on Friday night at the United Center. Started off with a nifty primary assist on the power play to set up Connor Bedard for a one-timer. Magnificent give-and-go play recognition there from both Bedard and Donato. He feeds it right into Bedzy's wheelhouse, and he blasted home a one-timer. An absolutely nasty finish for his 16th goal of the season. Donato then got himself on the board as well. A nice forehand, backhand, 5-hole finish to beat UC Saros. He wasn't done though, Blackhawks fans. That tic-tac goal passing play where he gave Seth Jones an absolutely yawning cage, as Darren Pang broke it down on the broadcast. I think with how hot Ryan Donato had been as a goal scorer, everyone, including clearly UC Saros in net for the Preds, thought he was going to shoot that puck. One of the few times where the extra pass this season has worked out in the Blackhawks' favor, gives Seth Jones an empty net. Jonesy immediately points on over to Donato in celebration. And then in the third, Ryan Donato, a howitzer of a wrister for his second goal of the game, 18th goal of the season. Once again, the leading goal scorer for the Chicago Blackhawks. Magnificent stuff out of he and many other players on Friday night. Connor Bedard had a 2-point game. So did Frank Nazar, as he had a beautiful one-timer to kick off the scoring for the Blackhawks on a feed from Alex Vlasic, who had 2 assists in this game. Teuvo Teravainen had 2 assists. Seth Jones had a goal and an assist as well. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the best games and most fun games of the entire season for the Blackhawks. Shout out to my buddy Antonio, who was in attendance for this one and did text our group message kind of poking the boys to make a trip on down to the UC with him. Unfortunately, I had some prior commitments that I wasn't able to get down to Chicago. I wouldn't have made it by the start of the game. But definitely a tough one to miss out on, because you don't see the Blackhawks up 5, have a 6-goal offensive performance, and get the W all that often. So really, really nice to see this group come up with that type of victory on Friday. Then on Saturday against the Blues, had a real good opportunity to keep the momentum going and pick up a second consecutive win for just the second time this season. A real fun back and forth game. I mean, as back and forth as it's been in any game all season long. The Hawks started off really hot. They got 2 goals in 38 seconds in the opening 20 minutes to jump ahead 2-0. Ryan Donato once again with his 19th goal of the season, hotter than burnt toast, as Seth Jones said in his interview following the game on Friday. Kept it going early in St. Louis to put the Blackhawks on the board. Craig Smith just 38 seconds later netted his first goal since returning from injury on a beautiful feed from Pat Maroon. But as it goes for the Blackhawks, you know, the good things don't tend to last long. And then in the second period, it was the Blues' turn to strike twice in under a minute, and actually just 10 seconds. It was a that's so Blackhawks type of moment. From up 2-0 to tied 2-2 in a matter of 10 seconds. They actually fell behind 3-2 going into the third period, and considering how lopsided that middle frame was, I really didn't think they had a chance going into the third period. I actually had to make a drive to the airport on Saturday at the start of the third period to go and pick up a relative, so I missed the beginning of the third period, sadly, but was checking for updates, and I was like, holy cow, this game has turned into absolute madness. Back and forth action. Ilya Mikheyev went absolutely nuts, and had the end result had gone the Blackhawks' way, Friday night could have been the Ryan Donato game. Saturday easily could have been the Ilya Mikheyev game. A beautiful coast-to-coast rush to put the Blackhawks ahead 5-4 with under 10 minutes to play. He had 2 assists on both of the Blackhawks goals earlier in the period. All of a sudden, they're up 5-4. As I said a moment ago, though, good things don't tend to last for this Blackhawks team. Weren't able to hang on down the stretch as St. Louis tied it up 5-5 with under 5 minutes to play. This bad boy ended up going into a shootout as if it couldn't get any more chaotic. And not only did it go into a shootout, Blackhawks fans, it went 10 rounds in the shootout. Arvid Soderblom was magnificent, making save after save. Sadly, though, so was Jordan Binnington. No one could get the better of him. I really thought it was going to be Pat Maroon. When I saw the big rig jump off the bench after making a nice primary assist to set up Craig Smith earlier in the game, the St. Louis native guy who helped the Blues win their Stanley Cup, I thought it would be so fitting for him to get the shootout winner. And I mean, I don't even know how many times, or even if he has gone in a shootout in his NHL career, Binnington came up with the save, and then Radek Faksa, of all people, winds up beating Arvid Soderblom. Undoubtedly, Soderblom's best performance in the shootout so far. Many people were making comparisons to Robin Lehner for the way during his Blackhawks tenure that he would give games away in the shootout after standing on his head in regulation and overtime. Not the narrative for Soderblom in this one. Unfortunately, his teammates kind of let him down. The Blackhawks wind up falling 6-5 to the Blues. They just cannot seem to beat them regardless of the circumstances. I mean, last year they had a 5-goal lead against the Blues, 5-0, I believe it was, and they wound up losing that game 7-5. So they just cannot beat the Blues, which is really, really frustrating, but they did earn yet another point, and the Blackhawks actually earn a point in 8 of their final 11 games going into the Four Nations break, playing a lot of good hockey, playing in a lot of close games, which has truly been the storyline of the season. I've had so many buddies text me throughout the year and be like, man, the Hawks are so bad once again. Like, they just lose a ton of close games, and that is a sign of a bad team. And I'm not arguing that the Blackhawks are bad, but it truly doesn't feel like, even with some of the young guys coming onto the scene more so here, like they're competitive and can hang with anyone. They just lack that it factor and that ability to get over to the hump. And when things go bad, they just tend to really steamroll in that direction. But at least the Blackhawks put up a couple of good offensive performances over the weekend, entertaining games. Like I said, at this point of the year, that's all we can really ask for. Points in 8 of their last 11. Yes, they have only won 3 of them, and I know it's tougher, especially the veterans in that room, guys like Jason Dickinson. You hear him talk to the media and how beaten down he's been from losing these last few years. It's frustrating, but they're making things close. They're making things interesting. All we can really ask for. Wish they could have got the win over the Blues, but a couple of performances that will leave the Blackhawks holding their head high as they go into this 2-week break for the Four Nations tournament. And speaking of the Four Nations tournament, Blackhawks fans, coming up here in just a moment, I'll break down each of the 4 teams' rosters and give my prediction as to who's coming out and winning the entire tournament. Real quick, though, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because with FanDuel, you can now place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay right in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And as most of my followers on X know, I'm a big same-game parlay type of guy. I usually like to parlay an anytime goal scorer with the over or the under, whatever kind of the historical data suggests for both of these two teams. But there's loads of options for whatever you would like to bet on. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com in order to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com, or go and download the FanDuel app for your shot at $150 worth of bonus bets. Go and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 2, the Four Nations tournament between the United States, Canada, Finland, and Sweden begins on Wednesday this week when Canada and Sweden open up the action at Montreal's Bell Center. As we know, Blackhawks fans, it's not going to be the most entertaining thing for us to watch from a Blackhawks perspective because Teuvo Teravainen is the lone member of the Hawks who's taking part in this tournament representing Finland. But I honestly do think, while I am sad that, Connor Bedard didn't make it for Canada or Alex Vlasic, Seth Jones didn't work their way onto Team USA's roster, I do think it is going to be nice to kind of take a step back and just truly enjoy this Four Nations experience as a hockey fan. Like, I really haven't been able to do that all that often aside from the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this is just kind of a unique setup, obviously, whenever you're playing internationally. It means a little bit more. There's the pride factor, and seeing guys who don't play alongside each other all that often get an opportunity to establish chemistry. And hockey is obviously such a team sport. I think it makes it even better for the international type of stuff, and haven't had it in a while for the highest level of professional hockey. So I'm super excited for this tournament to get underway. Make sure, go and jump in the comment section down below right now and let me know your thoughts on the Four Nations tournament, your excitement level for this bad boy, and also who you think's going to come out with this tournament win. Who's going to be taking it all home? Is it going to be the United States? Is it going to be Canada? I'm going to break it all down here in a second, but definitely interested to hear what all of my listeners and viewers have to say about the Four Nations tournament and who's going to win it all. Starting things off, though, with Canada, who has a very interesting roster, especially up front. They are going to be head coached by John Cooper, the man that's been behind the bench for the Tampa Bay Lightnings the last handful of seasons. The forward group for Canada is truly unbelievable. And by the way, I'm going through the line combinations that I saw here today as Four Nations practices have officially begun. I did not, as of the time of recording, I did not see Finland's lines released. I do not know if they had practiced as of yet. So I'm going with a little bit of a preview lines for Finland. The rest of the teams, though, these are the combinations that they had for their forwards and defensemen in the first day of Four Nations practice here today. For Canada, they had Sam Reinhart, Connor McDavid, and Mitch Marner serving as the top line. Then Mark Stone, Sidney Crosby, the man who's got all the questions around him. The Penguins have allowed him to make the decision as to whether or not he's going to take part in this tournament, which I think, by the way, is absolutely the right call for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I do think it's a much easier decision for them given where they're at in the standings and everything that's going on around the organization. But Sidney Crosby definitely deserves, for everything he's done for the sport, the team, the nation of Canada, like he deserves to be able to make this decision, whatever he thinks is best, what he wants to do without any outside noise or kind of added pressures. He practiced here today, though. I haven't really been keeping up with like the latest breaking news on every single player and every single nation, that's taking part in this tournament. There's only four nations, but Crosby obviously is the one who's had the question marks. As of now, looks like he's going to play. Was taking part in practice this morning, centering the second line with Mark Stone and Nathan MacKinnon. MacKinnon and Crosby playing on the line. Obviously, MacKinnon grew up idolizing Sid, and they've trained together for a long time. So really cool that it looks like they're going to be playing together. Seth Jarvis, Braden Point, and Brad Marchand look like they're going to be the third line, maybe a little bit of a checking line there for Canada, while Brandon Hagel, Anthony Cirelli, and Sam Bennett figure to be doing very much of the same thing down on the fourth line for Team Canada. Brandon Hagel, a guy, obviously, us Blackhawks fans are very familiar with, feel like he can jump up and down that lineup, and at points we can see him playing with big names like Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Sidney Crosby. He's been having a phenomenal year once again for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Travis Konechny did not practice for the Canadiens today due to injury, so I'm curious to see where he's going to kind of jump in. I think you got to have Seth Jarvis in the lineup, but you're picking hairs when it's splitting hairs when it's an all-star type of lineup. So maybe he gets in for Bennett. Maybe he winds up being the extra guy, but that is a loaded forward group, and the power play is going to be lethal with those guys. Back end is interesting for Canada, though. They have great players, but it's not when you think back to the 2010 Winter Olympics when they had Niedermeyer and Weber and Duncan Keith, and they might have had Pronger on that team. I'm missing guys too for sure, but an absolutely loaded blue line on the back end. Drew Doughty was a member of that team too. He is still here, but obviously is an older player coming off an injury and missing most of the season. Taves and Makar as the top pairing. I don't think anyone's going to bat an eye at that, but it's not, like I said, some of the guys we mentioned earlier, even though Cale Makar is widely recognized as the best defenseman in the game, more so known for his offensive and skating abilities. Second pairing for Canada, Shea Theodore and Drew Doughty, as I mentioned, coming off the injury, and then Josh Morrissey, who's been a stud for Winnipeg, skating along with Colton Parayko, who's probably got the biggest shot on the blue line for Canada, but not a lot of goal scorers in terms of their defensemen. Travis Sanheim, the likely candidate to serve as the seventh D-man. And then in net, that's the biggest question for Canada. Can they get the job done in net with Jordan Binnington, who looks like he's going to be the starter? Maybe it's Aiden Hill. Montembeault is likely to be the third. It's probably going to be either Binnington or Hill, but the blue line and goaltending for sure is the question for Canada, but they do have a lot of experience and a lot of star power up front, and also just the historic kind of bloodline of Canada winning these types of tournaments. Even though the tides have kind of shifted over the years, they have a lot of guys who have been there and done that in the most meaningful settings in hockey. Then the United States, who are going to be coached by Mike Sullivan. They had practice here this morning as well. Their forward group, maybe not as talented as Team Canada's, but they certainly shape up to be the more scrappy and physical of the two. Jake Gensel, Captain Pappy, Austin Matthews, top line center, with Jack Hughes as the wing. Absolutely electric skill and speed there. Jake Gensel, good net front present. Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, and Matthew Tkachuk shape up to be the second line. Little sandpaper there with Tkachuk. Eichel plays a good center ice game, and then Kyle Connor, prolific goal scorer. Matt Boldy, JT Miller, and Brady Tkachuk as the checking third line. And then Brock Nelson, obviously a surprise to make the team, along with Vinny Trocheck and Dylan Larkin, shape things out on the fourth line. I think United States has the more balanced of the four lines and the more physical, but they certainly don't have the elite skill that Canada does. But on the blue line, this is where I think the United States gets a little bit of an advantage. It is going to also come down to whether Quinn Hughes will play, and he did not practice here today, so these blue D pairings could change over the next couple of days before action begins. But what Mike Sullivan had this morning was Jacob Slavin and Adam Fox, Zach Werenski and Charlie McAvoy. Honestly, you could probably bump Werenski up with Fox, in my opinion. I'd rather have Slavin along with McAvoy, and then Noah Hannafin and Brock Faber round things out on the blue line. I know it's not as experienced as Team Canada, but if Quinn Hughes plays, I think they could have a little bit of an edge. They definitely have an edge in goal, though, does the United States. Connor Hellebuyck, likely on pace to win his third consecutive Vezina Trophy. They have Jake Ottinger should they need him, but they probably won't. Jeremy Swayman's on the team as well. But in net for the United States, man, that is such a safety blanket to have. I know it's a different type of experience for Hellebuyck, and in the postseason, he hasn't been as elite as he has been in the regular season. There's also multiple things that tie into that, but I definitely think Canada and the United States are destined to meet up in the championship for this bad boy. I do think they have the two most talented rosters, but it's not always how these tournaments work. I should point out Jake Sanderson has been added to the roster and is serving as the extra defenseman. Chris Kreider has been serving as the extra forward. Team Sweden, offensively, they have some talent on the wing. I just don't think they have quite enough center depth to get the job done. Top line today, William Nylander, Mika Zibanejad, and Ricard Raquel. Second line, Adrian Kempe, Elias Pettersson, and Philip Forsberg. Very sharp second line. Third line, Jesper Bratt, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Lucas Raymond. And then fourth line, Gustav Nyquist, Elias Lindholm, and Victor Arvidsson. Leo Carlsson, the second overall pick in 2023, serving as the extra there. Obviously, they have skill on the wing, like I mentioned. Nylander, Kempe, Forsberg, Raymond, Bratt. Elias Pettersson is a second-line center. He's no slouch there. Eriksson Ek, coming off of injury, but really good defensive center. Same with Elias Lindholm. Defensively, I think Sweden could be good. I just don't think they have enough game breakers and that one guy who could really take over this tournament. They're going to need William Nylander to be an absolute monster. I think Lucas Raymond could be in for a surprise big tournament as well. On defense, they have names. They're just all a little bit old. Victor Hedman and Jonas Brodin as the top pairing. Matthias Ekholm and Erik Karlsson as the second. Rasmus Dahlin adds a little bit of young juice to this decor along with Rasmus Andersson. Gustav Forsling, got to think he's going to be in there somewhere. Maybe even over Rasmus Dahlin potentially. Maybe that's crazy. Maybe they go with five lefties in the lineup. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but Gustav Forsling, think he's probably going to be in there somewhere considering the last 2 years he's had. In net for Sweden, it's either going to be Philip Gustafsson or Linus Ullmark. Gustafsson has been really good these last couple of years. I just don't think he's at that Connor Hellebuyck type of level, and it's hard to expect that out of them, and that's what Sweden is going to need out of him, honestly, to have a chance in this tournament. I do think they're more likely to make a run, though, than Finland, even though, Finland in team competitions, they just play so well as a unit, and they've shocked the world before. They've won a lot of hardware since 2018, 2019 World Championships, World Juniors. They won gold at the Olympics in hockey. This is a group that's well coached and they know how to play structured hockey as a unit. I just think they lack the talent and the upside and the goaltending. They have UC Saros in that, but he hasn't even really been all that good since the calendar switched over to 2025. And we just saw the Blackhawks, who historically stink against UC Saros. I mean, getting 2 goals against this guy has been like hard for the Blackhawks historically, and they pieced him for 6 on Friday night. So not a real good look for Finland, as they need him to be strong going into the tournament. They do have Kevin Lankinen, Blackhawks legend in UPL as well, but even with Saros' struggles, I think you have to start him in net, considering everything he's done in his body of work in his career for the Nashville Predators. Looking at Finland's projected lineup, as I mentioned off the top, starting segment 2, we didn't see their lines, or at least I didn't before jumping on recording. So these are projected lines for Finland. But Arturi Lehkonen, Alexander Barkov, and Mikko Rantanen, a very sharp top line for Finland. But they're going to have to be big dogs because there's just not a lot of depth on this team. Patrick Laine, Sebastian Aho, and Teuvo Teravainen, the latter two, of course, teammates for a long time with the Carolina Panthers. They're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting as well, because the third line for Finland, Rupe Hintz, Mikael Granlund, Capo Kakko, yeah, those are all fine NHL players, but in this type of setting, who they're going up against, like, they're a little bit mismatched. And then Eetu Luosterainen, Anton Lundell, Baby Barkey, those two guys played with one another for the Florida Panthers, along with Joel Armia, round things out as the fourth line. Not a bad fourth line again, but we're talking about all-star rosters here, and those guys are just outmatched compared to some of the other squads. On defense for Finland, though, this is really where they're going to have a lot of trouble, because they don't have Miro Heiskanen due to injury. They don't have Jani Hakanpää due to injury. Asa Lindell is going to have to be their number one, and that's asking a lot out of him. Blackhawks legend Olli Maatta looks like he's shaping up to either be playing on the top pairing or certainly a top 4 role in this tournament for the Finns. Juuso Välimäki and Nico Mikkola are there as well. Henri Jokiharju is going to have to be serviced a lot, and he's struggled pretty mightily throughout his career in the NHL and particularly this season for the Buffalo Sabres. And then I mentioned the concerns in net for Finland as well. Listen, they can shock the world. They've done it many times before, and quite honestly, they probably enjoy being the underdog going into this tournament because they've thrived in that role over the last half decade. I just don't see it happening in this tournament. I don't see how I could come on here and feel confident predicting that Finland is going to make a run. Yes, it is definitely in the cards. I just don't see it happening. To me, it's just set up to be Canada versus the United States. I think they're the two best rosters. Canada's offense is the best of any one specific group in this tournament, bar none. They just need their defense and goaltending to be okay, and they'll probably get themselves there. They have the historic factor of just having the red, white, and blues number when it matters the most. There has been this turning in the tides, though. The last handful of years, the United States at the World Juniors, right, and the amount of prospects the United States has ushered into the NHL, the talent they have, I think Quinn Hughes is going to be a huge factor on this blue line for the United States. But if Connor Hellebuyck plays the way that he's been playing really the last 2 to 3 years, I think the United States, even though they don't have as good of a forward group as Canada, they still have enough to go and get the job done. So maybe I'm a little biased as a United States citizen, I guess I should say. But I'm going with the United States over Canada. And I know there are going to be a lot of people out there choosing Canada and will say until we see the United States do it, I'm going to pick Canada. I absolutely understand that, but I'm feeling the changing of the tides here in the hockey world. So I'm predicting the United States over Canada. That's the way that I'm going. Make sure to give me your prediction down below in the comment section. But super excited for the action to get going on Wednesday again at the Bell Center in Montreal. I think the action then shifts on Thursday. I don't have the schedule exactly correct, to the United States at Madison Square Garden. It is going to be unbelievable. I'm super stoked for this tournament. Let me know your full thoughts down below in the comment section, but there's everything I got on the Four Nations tournament. Going to be fun to just kind of sit back and watch this bad boy, as Teuvo Teravainen is the lone member of the Blackhawks playing in the Four Nations tournament. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans. Before I close out today's episode, still got to talk about the amazing things that Nick Lardis is doing for the Brantford Bulldogs. But first, I got to talk to you all about Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? It's easy. Just use Indeed. Because when it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and can help you reach the right candidates faster because they make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right here, right now. So skip out on all of those unnecessary steps and unnecessary questions other job sites ask because now you can speed up your hiring process and get a $75 sponsored job credit by just going to Indeed.com/lockedon. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon right now, and make sure to support our show by saying you heard about Indeed right here on this very podcast. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon to go and get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your jobs more visibility. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Real quick, just want to say thank you to everyone out there for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your week. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast so that you can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates down the stretch of the season with daily tips from Steal and Flip. And you can find Locked On Fantasy Hockey right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, before I close things out on the show here today, Blackhawks fans, I definitely got to give some flowers to 2023 third-round pick Nick Lardis, which I haven't posted this on Twitter yet. I actually meant to do that this morning, thinking about it now, but every now and again, I'll go back on YouTube and look at old videos and look at old thumbnails and old titles, and I like looking back at it just to see some of the cool stuff I talked about and also to see how I can optimize SEO and change some of my titles and structure things in the right way. But it's also cool to just see old thumbnails and whatnot. And one of them that I found came from the 2023 NHL draft. And obviously with the NHL draft, there's day 1, which is the first round, and then day 2, rounds 2 through 7. Nick Lardis, being a third round selection, was a day 2 pick for the Blackhawks in the 2023 NHL draft. And one of my episodes was a thumbnail with it saying Hawks day 2 picks, where I broke down each and every day 2 selection the Blackhawks had in the 2023 NHL draft. A lot of good ones, including Roman Kanserov, who's absolutely tearing it up over in the KHL. But the man who was the picture of that YouTube thumbnail was none other than Nick Lardis, who I do remember talking about, and I went back and listened, of course, but I do remember talking about him saying he was my favorite day 2 selection. There was clear and undeniable upside. There were even people who gave Nick Lardis a first round grade, slipped all the way to the early third round for the Blackhawks, even though he was undersized then, still a little undersized now. He was my favorite day 2 selection, and it's been unbelievable to watch what this kid has done these last couple of years for the Brantford Bulldogs, but he just keeps on making history. What a big weekend it was for Nick Lardis as he hit the 50-goal plateau on Friday night, hit number 51 as well with the empty netter, and became just the 8th player in the OHL since the year 2000 to pot 50 goals before playing in their 50th game. Nick Lardis did it in game number 49. 51 goals in 49 games for him. Congratulations to Nick Lardis. But the fun didn't stop there. He kept it going on Saturday and wound up getting goal number 52 as well, setting a new Brantford Bulldogs single-season goal record, passing Arthur Kaliev, a player I actually talked about in Blackhawks trade rumors not all that long ago here on the show. Only took Nick Lardis 50 games to set the new Brantford Bulldogs goal-scoring record, and he's now scored goals in 16 consecutive games. It has been an absolute heater for him. Do want to give Merrick Vanacker, Blackhawks 2024 first-round pick, Nick Lardis' teammate with the Brantford Bulldogs, a shout-out as well. He set up Lardis for that 50th goal of the season. He's also found his mojo after missing most of the first half of the year due to rehabbing from shoulder injury. He's got it going, and the production has picked up for Vanacker. It's been dominant all year, though, for Nick Lardis. He now has 86 points in 50 games on the season, the leading goal scorer in all of the CHL with 52 goals in 50 games, along with 34 assists. I've talked about how I think the heads-up reads and the on-ice vision and playmaking has gotten better since when the Blackhawks first drafted him. The goal scoring is absolutely the bread and butter, though, and he has a magnificent release, a release that I do think is capable of being good at the next level. It's going to be interesting, as I've said time and time again, how Nick Lardis handles himself up against grown men. I've mentioned I've thought he's done a good job of it when getting preseason action, but that's a completely different beast. And until I see it at the next level, I'm not going to come on the show and be like, this kid is the next Alex DeBrincat, because while he certainly could be, and I do believe in his skill, and as I mentioned last week, if I had to guess right here, right now, like if my life was dependent on it and I had to guess whether I think Nick Lardis figures it out at the next level, I'm going to guess yes, but it's just because of his lack of size. I know he's gotten a little bit bigger, but he is still a thin kid. Like, it's not a guarantee that he's just going to come in and score goals at a special clip. I do think he's going to be an NHLer. I do think he's going to be a good goal scorer. The question is, how high level of a goal scorer can he be? Can he be a 40 goal scorer like we saw Alex DeBrincat do a couple of times here with the Blackhawks? But regardless of all that, it's just going to be awesome to see what number Nick Lardis winds up with at the end of the year. He's played in 50 games. I was trying to find this. I thought he missed one game earlier in the year, so I think the Brantford Bulldogs have played 51 games on the season, and they have a 68-game season. Regardless, Nick Lardis either has 18 or 17 games left on the year, but he now has 52 and 50. Can Nick Lardis, A, reach the number of 65 that Alex DeBrincat hit back in 2016-17 with the Erie Otters when he was teammates with Dylan Strome? And B, can Nick Lardis hit 70, which is something that hasn't been done in the OHL since John Tavares did it back in 2006-2007 and has only been done 7 times total in league history and just twice since 1990. So Nick Lardis is already in elite company, but it's going to be fun to watch him if he can get into real elite OHL company the rest of the way. I mentioned the next thing I think us Blackhawks fans are looking for would be the 60 goal number, and then whether or not he can track down Alex DeBrincat and then even number 70. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of comparisons to Alex DeBrincat. Lardis is the taller of the two players. He's 5'10", 5'11". He's just a lot smaller and not as compact or feisty as Alex DeBrincat was. And DeBrincat, even though he wasn't known for his play away from the puck, he was the much more capable of the two players at that point in time. It's going to be fun to watch Nick Lardis the rest of the year, though, but definitely wanted to give him a little hat tip here on the show and give him his flowers. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for 100% free wherever you may listen to your podcast. And also, what's 100% free is subscribing to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Please help me out. Help me reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers. I'd love to reach that realistically before the start of next season, with how important of a summer that's going to be for the Blackhawks, how many big talking points there's going to be. I definitely think that's within reach. So please help me out. 100% free. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the push notifications. Ring that bell. That way you'll get notified when the episode is uploaded to YouTube each and every day. Until next time, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Mondays, and I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.